Hello everyone, today's story is called One Snowy Night by Nick Butterworth. It's all about Percy the park keeper, who always feeds the animals in the park. But one cold winter's night, he discovers that his little friends need more than just food. It's cold in the park in winter, but Percy the park keeper doesn't mind. He puts on his warm coat and his big scarf and wears 2 pairs of woolly socks inside his Wellington boots. Percy likes to be out in the fresh air. I think that's a little bit like me in the winter. Oh, I don't like the cold, but I make sure I wrap up warm with my big scarf, 2 pairs of woolly socks, and I like to go out into the fresh air. In the middle of the park, there's a little hut. This is where Percy lives. When it gets too cold to be outside, Percy goes into his hut where it's nice and cosy and warm. The animals who live in the park know all about Percy's hut. Every day he shares his lunch with them. There he is eating his lunch. What do you think he might be eating for his lunch? One winter's night, it's so cold it begins to snow. Great big snowflakes fall past the window on Percy's hut. Oh, it's so cold. I think I'll need an extra blanket, said Percy. He made himself some hot cocoa and he got into bed. Suddenly, Percy heard a tapping sound. There was somebody at the door. Now, who could it be at this time of the night, thought Percy, as he went to open the door. Who do you think it is? There, on the step, was Squirrel. He looked very cold and miserable. I can't sleep, Percy, said the squirrel. My bed is full of snow. Oh dear, said Percy. Never mind. I've got plenty of room for 2. Come in. The squirrel snuggled down next to Percy and soon it felt lovely and warm. Until there was another knock again. Who can that be? Thought Percy. Standing outside were 2 shivering rabbits. It's freezing, said the rabbit. We're frozen, said the other one. You poor things, said Percy. Come in and warm up. The rabbit squeezed into the bed next to Percy and the squirrel. There wasn't much room. How many were in the bed now? Could you face the other way? Percy asked the squirrel. Your tail is tickling my nose. Oh dear, said Percy. Now there's somebody else at the door. Who was it this time? It was Fox. He looked very cold and hungry. Can I come in too? He asked. Percy scratched his head and he thought for a minute. Well, he said, if you promise to behave. I promise, said Fox, and he squeezed into the bed next to all the other animals. How many were in the bed now? There was Squirrel, the 2 rabbits, Percy and Fox. How many is that all together? Bump! Oops! The squirrel fell out of the bed. Who did that? Said Squirrel very crossly. Goodness gracious, said Percy. It's the door again. This time Percy had quite a surprise. There, on the step, was Badger, 2 ducks, a hedgehog, and a whole family of mice. And they all wanted a bed for the night. Do you think there's going to be enough room now? There'd be a bit of a squash and a squeeze. Poor old Percy and poor old Percy's bed. The animals pushed and shoved. They rolled around the bed and there was just not enough room for all of them. Soon they had all the covers in a big, tight ball. It was a bit of a mess. Then, bump! The covers rolled right off the bed and everybody fell onto the floor. Oh dear, said Percy, this won't do at all. My bed is just too small. Suddenly, one of the mice pricked up his ears. Oh, what's that noise? He said. They heard it again. Everybody listened. It was like they could hear a scratching sound coming from underneath them. There's something moving under the floorboard, whispered Percy. What do you think it might be? The animals looked frightened. The mice all started to squeak at once. Oh dear, who can it be? It might be a monster with its fierce claws and its sharp teeth. The noise grew louder. And the floorboards started to move. Look out, it's coming up now. Suddenly, there was a loud creak. Help! Cried the animals, and they all ran away. But Percy wasn't frightened. He started to chuckle. He said, and then he gave out a big laugh. Oh dear, he said. A small dark head was sticking up through the floorboards. What do you think it could be? I'll give you a clue. It rhymes with hole. What animal do you think it might be? It rhymes with hole. This isn't a monster, said Percy. It's a mole. I'm sorry to burst in like this, he said. I knocked on the door, but nobody heard me. Percy helped the mole up through the hole in the floor. He sat him on the hot water bottle to get him warm. Then he put the floorboards back. It's all right, everyone, he said. You can come out now. It's only Mole. But nobody wanted to move. Everybody stirred. Nobody wanted to come out. The squirrel was tucked away in the pockets of Percy's dressing gown. The hedgehog was in his coat. The fox, the rabbit, the badger and the ducks were all safely hidden away. The mice even had squeezed themselves into Percy's slippers. They were all very comfortable. Everyone had found a nice cosy bed. "Well, I never," said Percy. Percy yawned and he snuggled down in his own bed once again. He said, "That's better." He pulled the covers up. "Now I've got plenty of room. Oh, and a little bit to spare for a mole." Snip, snap, snout, the story's out. The end.